Unsolved.
So in tonight's episode, we answer the question, how did Philip Tucker get involved in the Zodiac killer case? How did Lee Allen become a suspect in 1971 and have a search warrant written for his trailer in Santa Rosa, and that Don Cheney moved to Southern California in January of 1968. So how did the ball get rolling on Arthur Lee Allen? So what happened was Don Cheney lived at this address in Pomona, and he went to the Pomona Police Department and reported that he felt like Arthur Lee Allen might be the Zodiac killer because Lee talked about that book, Most Dangerous Game, and about attaching a flashlight to his gun and being the Zodiac. Now, even though Cheney felt like they discarded what he said, the Pomona police didn't. They contacted San Francisco PD and the Vallejo Police Department, the person who was in charge of the homicide of Darlene Ferrin. He started an investigation on Arthur Lee Allen because he got in contact with the San Francisco PD. And so they're the ones that had the information about Don Cheney's report to the Pomona Police Department. And here you can see and read that it says approximately 11 months prior to the first Zodiac murder, so that would be January 1968, and it lists January 1968, that Cheney had this conversation with Arthur Lee Allen. And so the Vallejo Police Department decided to investigate Arthur Lee Allen. Now, years later, author Robert Graysmith wrote about Sergeant Lynch of the Vallejo Police Department had interviewed Arthur Lee Allen about his whereabouts on September 27th, 1969. Now, I'm not sure if this is accurate. This might be Captain Conway's recollection of what happened because of the following. The Vallejo police that was investigating Arthur Lee Allen could not locate any report where Allen was questioned about being the Zodiac suspect in that Lake Berryessa attack. Also, they contacted Lynch, and he could not recall questioning Arthur Lee Allen. But the odd thing is, Arthur Lee Allen said that he recalled being questioned by a Vallejo police sergeant about the Lake Berryessa murder in Napa County. And Arthur Lee Allen said that he had gone a place called Salt Point Ranch near Fort Ross. So how did Philip Tucker get involved in this case? Well, Arthur Lee Allen said that he might have had a conversation where he talked about being the Zodiac and about that book, Most Dangerous Game, with Mr. Kidder or Mr. Tucker. So that's how Philip Tucker got involved in this case. So Mr. Kidder said he didn't recall having any conversation like that with Lee Allen. So I'll just read this police report. Philip Tucker was called to Mr. Kidder's office and questioned about any conversations he might have had with Allen regarding Zodiac. He recalled casual-type conversations, and on one such occasion, Allen told him that he had been questioned by police as a suspect. Tucker remembered Allen having discussed a special light attached to a gun barrel so that a person could shoot accurately at night. On another occasion, he and his wife had visited Allen in his home. So let's start a deep dive on Philip Gray Tucker. And sometimes I'm accused of going too deep. And so here's a photograph of Philip Tucker at age 1. And here's another photograph of him at age 3. Well, I guess that criticism might be right. Let's move on a little bit. So here's a photograph of Philip when he was a senior in high school in 1965. And you can see he looks like the sketch of the Zodiac, except he looks younger. So here's a photograph of Philip from the newspaper around 1968 when he's older, and I think he looks even more like the Zodiac sketch. And then, to be fair, here's a photograph from his graduation from UC Berkeley in 1970, a year after the murder of Paul Stein in San Francisco in the sketch from 1969. And he doesn't look as much like the sketch here. And here's a passage from Robert Graysmith's book. It says in 1969, Philip Tucker indicated that Allen, who was a close friend of his, often talked about the Zodiac case. Tucker indicated that Allen had previously talked about shooting with special sights for shooting in the dark. Tucker indicated that he saw the Zodiac symbol at Allen's house and also some type of cryptograms. So a lot of people feel like there might have been 2 people that committed the Zodiac murders. So isn't it a possibility that it was Lee Allen and Philip Tucker, who was 14 years younger than Allen? That Lee Allen and Philip Tucker committed different Zodiac crimes. Now here's some details that maybe Philip Tucker was the Zodiac killer. He started writing for the Vallejo Times-Herald in 1966, and he covered high school activities and sports. So it's possible he knew the first 4 victims of the Zodiac. And he joined the paper sometime in 1968. You can see this Christmas edition of the paper. And at this time, he was the sports editor of the paper. And during the time of the Zodiac murders, he lived in Oakland, which is just east of San Francisco. And so he easily could have dropped off the letters in San Francisco and drove to Vallejo and Napa to commit those murders. And later, Philip Tucker worked for the Greater Vallejo Recreation District, where he stole funds from the city, and he was convicted and sent to jail. So he has a criminal record. Well, this ends this episode of Unsolved, and I'll see you next weekend with 2 new episodes.